Hi there. Welcome. I see we've already got Jamie Irene with us. Welcome, Jamie. I hope you're doing well. And my name is Iris Carter, and I'm trying to run the board and talk at the same time. It's kind of like patting my head and rubbing my belly. And obviously, this is not Margot that's with us tonight. We've got Dusty Staub who has joined us, and I'll be telling a little bit more about him. It takes a couple minutes for people to kind of tag in, and so while we're doing that, just to kind of get a few logistics up front, especially for new people, we are streaming live to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. And because of that, when people make comments, the comments come into the board that I have access to, and I can tell whether they're coming from Facebook or YouTube. But the people on Facebook won't see the YouTube people, and they go, "Where are those comments coming from?" And so, to avoid confusion, I will sometimes throw them up on here like this, and I'll also read them out. And Jamie says, "Good evening," and she's happy to be here, so we're happy to have you here. Um, Jamie got a copy of my book, and I was telling her about the program. We've been chatting online, so it's kind of cool to see her here. And if you're curious, let's see, I will throw up some things that not literally. I'm going to put some information up here. If anybody is interested, I did a book called The Care and Feeding of Ghosts and the Children Who See Them, which is a practical guide to help parents help children or anybody really, who I find a lot of people go into a panic. And so I wrote the book to try to ease minds, and not every ghost out there is out to get you. Uh, and let's see. Also, if you're new to the show, and you're wanting to know, well, who are Iris and Margot, and what did why did they start this? We did a prequel, so uh, you can go to YouTube or Facebook and go back to our first. Well, our first podcast had a title to it, but then we labeled the other one prequel to kind of introduce ourselves. So that is everything there. I believe we encourage questions, comments. Hello, Deborah. And Deborah is my sister, and she's got a weird sense of humor like I do. So she usually tries to be quiet, but I love her comments. So, but I'm partial. And Steve is looking forward to this. When Dusty speaks, we all listen. So, Dusty, do you know Steve?
I know Steve very well. Yes.
Welcome, Steve. I hope you enjoyed the show. So, tonight's program is just to remind everybody, it's the Warrior Heart, embracing the courage to shape yourself and your world. Celtic insights on living with authenticity and grace in times of difficulty. And Robert Staub goes by Dusty, and we are glad to have him with us this evening. He has been studying Celtic spirituality and imagination. If I say this wrong, jump in and tell me. But for about 50 years, and he started when he was 3 years old, and and he he's also a licensed marriage and family therapist, but his focus now is on or has grown to help people with authentic, courageous, I'm not saying it right. I'm messing it up, Dusty, because I'm just not as good at rolling it off the tongue as you are. But we'll get back to that. But their potential and to help humanity, and He leads teams and individuals, executives, in, I guess, finding their more authentic self and being more courageous in their lives. And he's also a honorary fellow in the School of Engineering at Virginia Tech, which is really cool. So, and I'm just going to add up here because I did it for me. I'll do it for you too. If anybody is interested and they want to see um, more about Dusty, and he's got a website. How do you say the EQIQ part? Is it just EQIQ?
EQIQleadership.com.
Okay. And fascinating website. He's also written several books, and I can share those as well. Um, got the thing going by. We got lots of stuff going on the screen. 7 Acts of Courage and Courage in the Valley of Death, Daily Practices for Wholehearted Living, The Heart of Leadership, and Dynamic Focus. And so all of those are inspirational type, I guess, books helping people with their. Tell us, Dusty. I'm going to shut up. Let the man talk.
So Iris, what we do in our organization, and Steve is a colleague of mine, we liberate the purpose, the passion, and the power of individuals, teams, and organizations. And when people find their purpose and they realize the power that's inherent in them, they tap into their passion, then they really begin to blossom. And my passion for 60 plus years now, ever since I was 11, I'm 71, my passion has been around helping people be their best self. And it has been a journey of facing into my fear and stepping into courage. And I started studying the Celts when I was about 20 years old. So close to 51 years now. And the ancient Celts had a lot to speak to me about, and the Celtic Imagination had a lot to teach me about how to live in an authentic and powerful way in a world full of change and a world full of anxiety and fear. And I take that Celtic spirituality and awareness, and I bring it into all the training we do on leadership development, building high performance teams and helping organizations to step up. And it is really around those core secrets, those core elements that help us be our best. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's fascinating that it's such a holistic and, to me, a very, well, the spiritual aspect, it's out there when you think of people in a corporation,
Yep.
the suits and ties, and and they're going, Celtic what?
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily talk to them about the Celtic way. I use that information and insight to bring forward what I bring forward. So it's not a matter of saying they have to understand Celtic myth. It's a matter of understanding Celtic warrior. And there was a man named Danon Perry, beautiful man. He wrote a wonderful book called Warriors of the Heart. And he was a Celtic warrior. He helped bring the Protestants in Northern Ireland and the Catholics in Northern Ireland together to talk to each other for healing and reconciliation. And Warriors of the Heart, he really talked about how to really capture the essence of the heart and bring that forward into the world to build, like Dan Millman talks about, the peaceful warrior. Being a warrior for peace, being a warrior for love and connection. And the Celtic imagination is a great part for that. So I don't have to talk about Celts. I don't have to talk about spirituality to talk to people about finding their heart, finding courage, facing into the tough issues, and then giving tools and resources for that, and understanding you're not alone. There's a lot of support, internal and external, that you can call on once you become aware of it.
Now, I know realistically that warriors are strong people, and they're, but a lot of people hear the word warrior and they think uh, enemies, fighting, killing,
Yep.
and so how do you draw that line for people to understand?
I think, a woman giving childbirth, is a very challenging thing. I've watched my wife give birth to three wonderful children. And somebody once said, if men had to give birth, the human race would die off. There is a warrior spirit to a woman when she's in the process of bringing life into this world. And there's a warrior spirit. The women who fought, the suffragettes, who
Yes.
went out, women before the movement, in 1910, 1920, women couldn't vote because you all were too emotional, right?
Yeah.
And this group of women,
Hysterics.
this group of women began agitating. And there were men who threw bricks at them and chased them with bats and attacked them. They had to be true warriors, not to fight back, but a warrior fighting for a principle and what's right. Mahatma Gandhi was a warrior, a
True.
spiritual warrior, right? And I think that when we look at the warrior as the sense of finding the courage to be in service to something greater, and you're willing to fight for it, not out of violence, but out of a sense of really creating something that really means the most to you. That's what I mean by warrior, and a warrior of the heart. Now, in the Celtic tradition, a warrior who was in service to their ego was a danger. A warrior who was in service to the goddess, a warrior who was in service to something greater, to the kingdom, was someone who was sacred. And so it's the difference between, are you fighting for your ego? Are you fighting for your own self and your own self-interest? Or is this for the greater good? Is this a way of sharing and doing what's right? And the ancient Celts believed there were three great traits that they admired the most. The first was courage. You had to have courage. You had to be willing to face your fear. You had to be willing to deal with your demons. The second was a sense of generosity, that someone who held on to stuff and wasn't willing to be generous and share, that was somebody not to admire, even if they were courageous. If they weren't generous, they weren't whole. And the last was someone who offered blessing. So courageous, someone who was generous, and someone who offered blessing. That is the essence, I think, of a warrior of the heart.
Wow. That's very powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine how people come out of your workshops, 5 minutes, and I'm like, no. um, so, so tell me a little bit about, let's see, and just to back up just a little bit, I wanted to mention we were talking about, in addition to these the things with the workshops and stuff, you're also a sacred fire holder. Is that
Yeah, in the sacred fire tradition, my wife and I have been, my wife's been a firekeeper for nearly 12 years. I've been a firekeeper for the past 6. And we have a monthly community fire on the land, and people come and we'll do a fire and we consecrate the fire. And people will sit around the fire and just talk, share stories. Sometimes people cry. Sometimes we play music. Sometimes there's drumming. It's non-denominational. It's non-religious. It is very spiritual. It's the sense of connecting around fire like humans have for hundreds of thousands of years. No TV, no diatribes, no politics. We've had people who voted for Trump and people who voted for Biden sit together because we're being humans and we're sharing from the heart.
that's incredible. And I think I should mention too, you were the impetus for Margot starting Lua, right?
No, no, no.
That
She
wasn't
she
you. That was
That wasn't me. No,
oh
she and David met at
at
one of
the
our
okay.
fires.
All right.
So the man she's married to, they met at a fire, and so we were matchmakers in that sense. But that I know she
Fantastic.
had created Lua long before she met me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I knew that I knew I'd have to make a mistake somewhere in here because there's just so much information flying around. But But yeah, I know Margot speaks highly of you, and I'm just getting to know you. So yeah. So tell us a little bit. Let's go into a little bit about what your topic is tonight, and I know you've got some thoughts, and I'll just let you kind of start with it.
Yeah, well, I'll first say a few words in Irish Celtic tongue. Dia is meragwit. Dia is meragwit. God and Mary be with you, which is the closest that we can come to God and Goddess be with you, right? And and so the essence of this for me is, if you look at the Irish imagination and the Celtic imagination, the Welsh imagination, the Celts were all over Europe at one time. And the Celtic imagination says there are five major things that distinguished the Celts. First was a deep love of nature. And for them, there was no distinction between nature and divine. In fact, God was immanent. The divine was immanent. The goddess was immanent in everything. Everything was an expression of the divine. And so they really had a reverence for nature and a caretaking for nature. They saw themselves as stewards, not masters. The second thing that distinguished them was a sense of balance. They honored balance, that they noticed that in nature there was a balance. And if a tree was leaning too far, eventually it would fall over. That if someone ate too much, they would get sick. Too much sun, you could die. So the sense of finding the proper balance in life was really important. The third thing was they honored liminal spaces. That is, the Celts were very aware of when you moved from a field into a forest, that space between field and forest, the space between the shore and the ocean, a stream flowing past, right on the edge of the stream, the time between at twilight, when it's not yet dark and yet the light is fading, the first rays of morning, when it's not yet light, yet not dark. Those are called thin spaces. And a liminal space was considered a thin space where you could move from one world to the other, and wisdom and knowledge could flow to you in those thin spaces. So that liminal. And when you move from being a young girl to a woman, from a woman to being a mother, from a mother to being, an older woman, same thing with men. Moving through these liminal spaces and noticing the passage of time and noticing that space and honoring it was really important. A fourth thing that they really believed in was the power of three. It's how St. Patrick was able to convert them to Christianity in 40 short years, was the power of three. And the power of three was the goddess that was, the goddess that is, the goddess that will be, past, present, future. And for them, when you had a goddess, she had three heads, three aspects. The same thing with a god. And the number three, by the way, the Zen came up, it really tracks with what the Zen teachers say. From the one comes the two, from the two comes the three, from the three comes all things, right? So the essence of three and the magic of numbers, especially the number three. And then finally, the fifth element for the Celts was Awen, a sense of direct connection with the divine, that I could receive transmutations or transmissions of information from the divine. I don't need a priest. I don't need a druid. I can have that connection in nature and just have the message and the wisdom just flow to me. And if I was open, Awen, the grace of the goddess, the grace of greater wisdom would flow through me. So those five things went into what made a Celt: a love of nature, a sense of balance, the power of threes, paying attention to liminal spaces, thin spaces, moments of transition is another way to say it. And then also that sense of being inspired and open. That was a way of living in a holistic way that is missing for a lot of people in our society today.
Very true. Very true. I've got to show this real quick. Steve says you can see why Dusty was one of Jack Canfield's top 3 interviews.
Thanks, Steve. Jack did say that. That was very nice of him.
Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, and I, it's interesting because like the liminal spaces and the transition time, you see that a lot in anybody who is connected with nature and earth. There's a lot of those practices
Yeah.
and shamanism and all that where they focus on those transitional thinning veils and that sort of thing, which is something I've always been drawn to. Didn't really know why. I've told Margot, I said my life, I knew that I was drawn to certain things.
Yeah.
And even as a kid, I was a rock collector. I loved collecting rocks. I didn't know why. I just, but oh, that's pretty. Oh, I like that one. Oh, this one has layers. And,
Mm.
and I had this big collection of them. And I was very particular. Or, and I knew about things, but I didn't know the overall connection. And it's not been until more recent years where all of a sudden I'm getting terminology for these things. And it's like, oh, is that what that is?
When our youngest, who's now 26, when she was a little girl, she was collecting all these rocks. She had them up on her shelves and everything. And I was in her room, and her mother walked in, and I said, I wonder why she collects all these rocks. And she said, come with me. So we went back to our bedroom, and there on my windowsill are all the rocks I collected. Over to my altar, all the rocks over there. In the bathroom by my side. So, okay, she comes by it honestly. It's that the sense of just the magic of rocks, of the substance of them, and rocks for the Hindus were sacred. They collected huge rocks, and there was, in fact, there's a picture of a Hindu saint surrounded by several tons of rocks that he'd collected. So,
Oh my gosh, that's
so it's
unreal.
real nature. It's some amazing places.
Angela says those are my favorite places to recharge and reconnect I guess, at the transitional times and points. And yeah, it really is. I remember sitting stream side, and I can't get enough of the ocean.
Iris, that liminal space that everybody can play with, that moment before you fall asleep, you're not really asleep, you're not quite awake. That moment is a liminal space. And in that space, what neuroscientists tell us is we enter a hypnagogic state. Fancy term, hypnagogic. Merely means that what happens is that our mental processes slow down and our imagination opens, and vivid ideas, creativity, imagery can flow. Same thing in the morning. Before you wake up, you're laying there, you're just starting to wake up, you're not quite awake. Hang out there. Hang out in that thin space. And images and creativity and beautiful things will begin to flow.
Good advice. Good advice. And let's see, what's Angela say here. I still have rocks from early elementary school, like mine's. Yes. And I know at one point, I guess I was becoming a teenager. I finally decided I didn't really know what to do with my rocks, and I finally gave them up.
Oh, no.
Now I miss them, but I'm starting to kind of bring in different. I've got some interesting ones that I've collected more recently. So tell us more. What's do you want me to share your you did a TED Talk in Wilmington.
Yeah, well, Wilmington, Delaware, yeah. And
Okay.
it was a 10-minute talk that only took 70 hours to put together.
I
Uh,
know they're intensive.
yeah, and
Intensive.
it was very well received. But it was on a moment of transition, a liminal space for me. And I tell that story of when I really became a man in this world, as opposed to a self-obsessed, complaining uh, being who was blaming everybody else for why he wasn't happy. And it was a liminal moment where I was working in the VA hospital, working with a veteran, and I was at his bedside when he took his last breath. And I was with his wife and his daughter and the duty nurse. And I was with him when he died. And after they left the room, I couldn't leave. And it was a moment of satori, a moment of awakening. And it was like the wings of the angels enfolded me. All wind flowed down. I realized I'm going to die too. I'm going to have to let go of everything I love, everything. And you know what? How am I spending my time now? Am I being my best version of me? No, I was mad at my dad. I was complaining. No, I was self-obsessed. And in that moment, the 7 acts of courage were born. And I realized that courage is not just one act, there's 7 different acts. And one of them is the courage to be vulnerable. You know, one of them is the courage to see current reality. One of them, the courage is to dream of a better way. One is the courage to take action. There were different acts that came to me. And I realized there was no problem in the world. It was me. And when I began to change me, and I began to look at that, and I began to really incorporate what I was starting to learn from the Celts and really took it to heart, it transformed my relationship with my father, and it transformed my father. He changed. It took 3 years, but he changed after I changed. It only took me 9 months to be able to treat him with love and respect, no matter what he was doing. And when I treat him only with love and respect, he couldn't keep acting the way he did for more than 3 years. And he changed. So I discovered that when we change at heart, and the Celts could tell you this, when we change at heart, the world around us has to change. We have the Celts had this wonderful image of that we're in a universe of sacred shapes. There are all these sacred shapes around us. A human being is a sacred shape. A lamp is a sacred shape. You know, an iPhone is a sacred shape. A sacred shape is something like this. And that we as human beings have this ability to shape the world around us. And the insight they had was that our power to shape the world, and we are shaped by the world. The insight I came to after I'd lived with this, that as a young therapist and began putting all this together, is that when we shape the world and we begin to shape the other people in our life, we shape ourselves. I can't shape my relationship with you, Iris, without reshaping myself. So as I'm shaping the world, I'm shaping myself. So what kind of shape am I creating? Am I creating a shape of love and understanding, compassion, or one of judgment and criticality? Am I shaping a shape of courage and of living with my passion? Or am I shaping fear and anxiety? You know, am I shaping more inclusivity, or if I'm shaping exclusivity? And so as we shape the world and we shape our relationships, we shape ourselves also. So we cannot shape without being shaped. And so part of that warrior's heart is having the courage to realize, I want to shape the world. I want to shape my relationship with my father a different way. And what I discovered is when I started shaping my relationship with my father, it reshaped me. It also shaped him. And so there's this participation, this sense of immediacy, of belonging, that is very Celtic, very much of the path I'm on, where there is no real separation. You know, and the funny thing is, I'm also interested in science. I was a top science student in my high school. I started off as a biochemistry major. I'm interested in quantum physics. And the quantum physicists sound like raving mystics today.
Yes.
You know, this is not really solid. It's just vibrating at a level that allows you to see it as solid, but it's not really composed of anything but vibrational patterns and energy. It's really nothing. You know, and it's not really anything until you look at it. And when you look at it, how you look at it shapes it, which sounds very Celtic. So with the farthest edge of our science, the physicists, the quantum physicists, and the ancient Celts are actually meeting up in some really amazing ways. And the amazing thing is the way I think of the world, the way I shape the world in my perception begins to actually impact the world.
Yes.
And if I'm looking at you and I'm thinking loving, kind thoughts without saying
alert from calendar. 8 notifications for calendar.
Sorry.
That's okay. You got some busy times coming.
I don't know what. Sorry, my calendar popped in there. It is amazing the power we have. If I'm sitting here and I'm thinking loving, kind, generous thoughts towards you, even across the this distance, there's an impact. If I'm sitting here in judgment and criticality, it's a different impact. So it sounds woo-woo and it sounds airy-fairy, and yet it's very much based in quantum physics, and it fits with what the ancient Celts understood and what the shamans understood, and it fits with my experience too.
Very
How
much.
I think, how I generate energy from this heart and this head towards others has an impact on them. So the quality of our thoughts is very, very powerful. And so we take responsibility for those thoughts, and we find a way of going into awe and generosity and appreciation and blessing, as opposed to condemnation and judgment and fear and anger. That makes sense?
Yes, and it's interesting because, in fact, just a few hours ago, I wrote I work at a local community college, and I send out every other week. I send out a Wednesday newsletter, and it was like almost the day was almost over, and I went, oh, I forgot to do it. And I was like, what am I going to write about? And this idea came to me. And generally what I'm doing is I'm giving job tips and how to interview, how to look for jobs, those kinds of things. But I'll also get into like the soft skills and how to get along with people and that sort of thing. And so I just did a thing on smiling. I said, smile. We're getting into a new year, and we've got, people are getting back into the grind of things, and we should be smiling, shouldn't we? But some people are getting out of bed grumpy. They don't like their alarm clocks, all that stuff. And I said, but if you smile, even though we're wearing masks and because we have to have masks on campus, the smile still shines. People talk about the light in your eyes, and it changes the shape of your eyes and that sort of thing. And so we can tell. And I shared a story about a friend who went to a doctor's office back when masks first started. And as she was leaving the doctor's office, she was checking out with the receptionist. And so I don't remember the exact exchange, but it was like she said, and I can see your smile even though we're wearing masks. And she could tell the woman's smile got even brighter. And the people in the waiting room, she kind of turned and she went, I can see your smile. And I can see your smile. And she said you could just see all these people lighting up as she was pointing out, and how that.
Yes.
And it's also like a muscle memory. So even if you don't feel well, you smile, and science has proven that it starts the endorphins and the other pheno somethings and all that stuff. And it's like a muscle memory, and I gave the tip, if you flop in the chair to study, then it's the same chair that you always watch movies in. Guess what? You're going to get distracted because your body is used to relaxing and watching the movie in that chair. So the same with a smile. Your body's going to remember when you were happy and smiling. So it's interesting when you talk about the physics and that sort of stuff that goes into that, and I totally agree. I want to. Jamie asked a question, and it kind of goes to what you were saying. Did the Celtic people believe in manifesting?
Yes, they believed in manifesting. You manifest through prayer. You manifest through sacrifice. You manifest through gratitude. And the attitude, in fact, the Celtic tongue, the Irish tongue, is almost every word is an image. It's a blessing. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be ever at your back. May the sun shine upon you. May your friends always be ready to receive you. I mean, there's a blessing in the actual Celtic language is almost a form of blessing. When you put it into English, it sounds sweet. And it's very profound. So the Celts really believed in manifesting, and that manifesting was that everything was a gift of the goddess. Everything came out of the divine feminine. And that it was only being in relationship with that and being willing to offer gratitude, appreciation, that you could manifest in your life. They believed that you could manifest anything. And in fact, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the shape-shifting. The Celts believed that you could shift into something else. In fact, one of the first Celtic first person to step on the land of Erin, the island of Ireland, was Amergin of the Milesians. And this is a famous quote. He was the chief poet. He was also the leader. He was the first to step on the shore of the Celtic people. And it says, I am the wind which breathes upon the sea. I am the wave of the ocean. I am the murmur of the billows. I am the ox of 7 combats. I am a vulture upon the rocks. I am a beam of the sun. I am the fairest of plants. I am the wild boar in valor. I am the salmon in the water. I am a lake in the plain. I am a world of knowledge. I am the point of a lance of spear in battle. I am the God who created fire in the head. I am fire in the head. That is the active Celtic imagination, that we can be a tree. We can be the mountain. We can be the wind. We can be the moon. We can be a moonbeam. We can be a plank floating on the ocean. And our ability to see ourselves and understand ourselves this way is a way of understanding the beautiful manifestation of the divinity which we exist in, this incredible world that is vibrating at different levels, a vibrating vast universe that looks more and more, as Sir Julian James says, the great astrophysicist, it's more like a great thought than a great machine. Newtonian physics is being replaced by quantum physics. It's not like a great clock. It's more like a great thought. And we're all aspects of that great thought, that great mind that comprises everything. I like what Einstein said. Einstein said, when you first go into science, you become an atheist. But as you get deeper into science, and you get down into the mysteries, you become a spiritual person.
Yeah, and I've noticed more and more in recent years how science is proving what we already knew. It's like, or what a lot of us already knew.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I'm glad you're catching up.
Yeah.
And Russ says, here's to smiling. Yes, very much so.
Hello, Russ.
And Jamie mentioned, bridging physics with the energy, emotion, and energy never dies. It's another physics property. I remember that from my 9th grade physics class.
Well, Einstein actually believed in ghosts. He said energy can't be destroyed, doesn't die. So why wouldn't certain energetic signatures hang around?
Right. Exactly. So yeah, and that's what I talk about, some of that in my book too, because it's like you have people that when you see the people coming down the stairs, oh, you always see the lady in white coming down the stairs, and it's the same thing. That's more of an energy imprint. It's not consciousness. It's an energy imprint. But
Yeah.
then there are other energies that are interacting. So but you gotta recognize the difference.
Yes, ma'am.
And you were talking about, I was going to put this up. You mentioned some of these, so I'll go ahead and.
Oh yeah, this was my TEDx talk.
Yes, and so this was in Wilmington, Delaware, and it was the 7 acts of courage. Was there any on here that you didn't?
Well, I didn't talk about the courage to dream and express the dream, the courage to see current reality, the courage to confront, to tell truth to power, as the Quakers put it, the courage to be confronted, the courage to learn and grow, which means to step into the unknown, to step into that liminal space, to give up the addiction to being right, the courage to be vulnerable and open. And I had a lot of problems with that until a wonderful TED talk came out about the power of vulnerability. And then the courage to take action. But when you act based on those other 6 acts, you now take action with greater wisdom. And for me, that vulnerability is the openness and realizing that we don't ever do anything on our own. There are essences and spirits and beings that support us. There are people that support us and love us. You think about this, Iris. You had a mom and dad. Your mom and dad each had a mom and dad. Those mom and dads each had a mom and dad. So you go from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32. You go back enough generations, and you have more ancestors than there were people on the earth that led to who you are today. And I love, my friend Russ might put it this way, that we are the earth consciously looking back upon itself, the earth in conscious looking out at the universe with wonder and awe. And I think that's a wonderful way to look at it. It's very Celtic. It's the sense of reverence for nature. And as I was sharing with you before we started, I was listening to an elder, an indigenous elder, who said, well, grandfather, what should we do to save the planet? And he said, you don't need to save the planet. The planet will be fine. We may not be around. We may take a number of species with us, but the planet will recover and move on. Now, if we want to be here, there's some things we could do. What can we do? What can we do? Well, first, quit trying to correct everybody else and make sure that you're living in harmony with yourself. Become a magnetic influence so that other people want to know how you can be happy, how you can live this way, and show a reverence for our mother, show a reverence for nature, show an appreciation, and realize we are stewards at best. We are not owners. We're stewards of our body. We don't own it. We'd have to give it up. Can we be stewards of this earth instead of treating it like it's something, some possession? I like what Chief Joseph said. He said, white people are crazy. You treat the world like it's dead, rocks like they're dead, the earth like it's dead, your own body's like it's dead. Rocks are alive. Quantum physics. Trees are certainly alive. When we start seeing things as alive and worthy of reverence and appreciation, like the Celts did, like many indigenous people do, we're going to be back on a pathway. And until we get there, we're walking on very, very thin ice, I think.
Very much so. I completely agree. I love the story about your dad. I watched the talk, and I wonder if you would speak to that for a minute. And
oh, yeah. This is my dad on a good day. This was his happy face. And the story I told was that, my father was Robert Earl Staub. I was Robert Earl Staub II. And but when I was one day old, he nicknamed me Dusty because there's only one Bob Staub, and that was him. But we moved. I was in 10 different schools the first 10 years of schooling, and in 3 different countries. He was a military advisor. He was a paratrooper with the 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, and 18 Airborne Corps. And I spent the first 17 years of my life in the military. And I had a lot of fear because we moved around. In England, I was this damn Yank. And in Texas, I was this damn RC, damn Roman Catholic. In many places, I was just this damn Army brat. And I got beat up a lot, bullied a lot. And I couldn't go home and let my dad know because he was a warrior and he would kick my tail or whip me and tell me to go back and kick ass. And so I would cover up having been beaten up. By 5th grade, I figured out how to diffuse every fight. I became a practical psychologist, and I've never been in a fight since. I've diffused more fights, and I discovered that there are, and this is before I discovered the Celts, that there are 3 secrets. 1, show no fear. Show no fear. You might be terrified inside, but it's like when you're swimming with a shark, don't bleed. Show no fear. 2nd, don't aggress. The bully knows what to do with aggression. Don't aggress, don't show any fear. That confuses them. 3rd, appeal to their higher reason. That, sure, of course you could beat me up. I've never done anything to you. You win. It has worked as long as, and then I discovered the martial art form of Aikido. At Aikido, the essence of a true master of Aikido is you defeat your opponent before the battle begins by preventing the battle. You diffuse it. And so I became a master of Aikido before I started studying Aikido in terms of verbal Aikido. And I didn't take that as far as the discipline until that moment in the VA hospital when I realized that that someday I was going to die, and it was very real. And that woke me up. And so what I realized with my father, where we had been like this, and I was in judgment of him, and he never did it right, and all that stuff, that was my story. He was doing the very best he knew how to do. And he was doing it with as much integrity and much courage and as much love as he could muster, given what he'd gone through and what he'd experienced in life. And when I shifted my way of thinking and I began to be the man I was meant to be, coming from my heart, being a warrior of the heart, showing the compassion, showing the courage, showing the love, I changed. And if he had never changed, it would have been okay. But he did. And I got the father I always wanted. In the last 10 years, from age 32 to age 42, I had the father I always wanted, because from age 29 to 32, I was busy becoming the man I was meant to be. And I discovered the Celts, of course, when I was about 21, 22, and that kept informing me, and that kept engaging me, and it opened my heart. So my dad was a great teacher to me.
Yes. And that's another thing. If we recognize the teachers that are brought to us and learn from them, and that's something I try to share with people all the time. Um, I'm it is, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
If you're taking care of yourself, the rest will follow, or it won't matter because you're taking care of yourself. and and rather than, I mean, and think about how much time we waste judging and fussing at others and all that, when it's like, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? If you're happy and you're centered and you're focusing on what you want to present to others, then and it just kind of spirals and goes off to other people. Other people kind of go, oh, well, that's cool. Look, she's being understanding, and and it grows.
Yes, it does. We have this thing called emotional resonance, and the brain produces a pulse of energy, but it can't get beyond the skull. So you have to attach electrodes here to pick up the pulse of the brain. The heart produces a pulse more than 50 times stronger than the electromagnetic pulse of the brain, and it's soft tissue. So you can pick up the signal through machinery, through devices of the heartbeat within a 10-foot circumference around an individual. So within a 10-foot circumference, my heartbeat is interpenetrating with someone else's heartbeat if they're within 10 feet of me. And the heart is sending out vast amounts of information. Electrocardiogram only gets 1% of the information the heart sends. And there's more information flowing from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. Neurophysiologists now tell us, which would not surprise the Celts. And that signal, and Dr. Candace Pert and her team discovered neuropeptides, molecules of meaning. And every time we have a thought, every time we have a powerful emotion, every time our gut clenches up, our gut, our heart, and our brain all produce neuropeptides, which are proteins that tell our body, tell our immune system, tell us how to respond. If I'm thinking angry, vengeful thoughts, and I'm having angry, vengeful feelings, and my gut is all clenched, I'm producing neuropeptides which damage my immune system, damage my capacity to be flexible, open, and responsive. If instead I can come to a more compassionate or a loving or forgiving space or peaceful place, the neuropeptides that are being produced and flooding the system help me to tune up my immune system, tune up my capacity to be more flexible, responsive, and allows me to live in this body with greater ease and grace. That's just physiology, just chemistry. So how I think, how I run my emotions, how I deal with my gut, as the Chinese would say, the belly mind, the heart mind, and the head mind, or as the Celts would say, fire in the belly, fire in the heart, the cauldron of the belly, the cauldron of the heart, and the cauldron of the brain. They also had that sense of the wisdom of the gut, of the heart informing the head. And when you do that and you have fire in the head, it's now genius, it's now creativity, but it's informed by this greater flow of life force and this flood of neuropeptides, and the heart sending more and more information to the brain, which gives the brain direction and guidance. I mean, it's fascinating how all the sciences, psychoneuroimmunology, the new science from Dr. Pert's research, the physics, quantum physics, the ancient Celts, the shamans, the Chinese, the ancient Chinese medicine, all of this, it's all coming together. And if we're open to it, we're aware of it, we begin, this is a much more mysterious, magical place we live in. It's living, it's alive. There's nothing dead. And can we begin to celebrate that life? That's part of that Celtic, for me, the ancient Celtic imagination, Celtic spirit.
Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, I love that. I want to encourage, I can tell people must be listening because the chat is quieting down. But if y'all have questions, please post them because I want to share them, and I don't want to be the only one coming up with the questions up here because it's much more fruitful when it comes from y'all. Um, what direction did you want to head in from here? We've got about another 10 minutes, so.
Well, I wanted to say that there is a wonderful poem. It's attributed to St. Patrick. It's called but it was written after St. Patrick, I believe. It's called "The Cry of the Deer," but there's a wonderful set of lines in there which gives you a sense of the Celtic imagination, the love of nature, the sense of balance, the sense of appreciation, the sense of blessing, and the sense of power that we bring. And it starts with, "I arise today through the strength of heaven, the light of sun, the radiance of moon, the splendor of fire, speed of lightning, the swiftness of wind, the depth of sea, the stability of earth, and the firmness of rock. I arise today through a mighty power, through the grace of heaven." That's just part of it. Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful.
And if we arise each day, realizing the stability of earth, the firmness of rock, the splendor of fire, the radiance of moon, the beauty of the sun, the wind blowing past, and we can begin to open ourselves up to that, to the liminal spaces of movement, the joy and the love of nature, the sense of appreciating, creating greater balance in the way we live, and being open to Awen, that divine flow of energy, and always coming back to our hearts. I think that's going to help everybody go through whatever challenges they need, whatever difficulties come their way. And the essence of a great Celtic spirit was when the time comes to lay down his or her life, they laid down their life with gratitude, blessing, and grace.
That is beautiful. And what I liked about the poem, the waking up, is being grounded but open and connected. It just says so much. Deborah says, when you take on this new attitude, I assume there are moments of faltering. What do you do? What do you use to center yourself again?
That's a great question, Deborah. It's the key is saying, this is what I choose. And the old me, the old way of thinking is going to come in. And by the way, living in a healthy, mentally, spiritually healthy way is countercultural to our culture. So we've got the culture giving us all kinds of messages. Just watch the news.
Or rather, don't.
Don't. Yeah. One of the healthiest things to do is stop watching the news. But our piece of it is we're going to falter. It's not like, I make this decision and now I'm in this great space. I make the decision, I'm in this great space. Oh no, now here comes some of those shitty feelings. Here comes some of that resentment or anger. Here comes that self-doubt. Oh, look at myself go. Look where that takes me. Do I like going there? No. Oh, remember, can I surrender this to the sun? Can I surrender this to the brilliance of fire? Can I ground myself again? So just slow down. You take 4 or 5 or 6 deep breaths. Put your hand on your heart. Say, I love myself for doubting. I love myself for this old way of thinking. And I don't need it right now. Thank you. And so you thank it as an old friend who no longer needed, and you let it go and you bring yourself back. And if you do that with love and compassion, and you keep doing that, remembering to breathe, remembering to center, remembering to give yourself love in that moment when you're not feeling love, loving yourself for not loving, it begins to be transformative and it becomes a pattern. And then it gets easier and easier. You go longer and longer before some of that old shitty feelings and shitty thinking, stinking thinking comes in, and you release it more easily. And that's been my experience. And that's been the experience of people that I've coached and worked with. So I think
That's
the
a
essence
good,
is
practical, solid way.
be gentle with ourselves, be kind to ourselves is really the key.
Yeah, forgiving yourself because, well, and this is, I think, a phrase I'm going to take out of my vernacular, but, I often say, well, we're not perfect, but we are. I mean, we can give ourselves permission to be perfect. Not in the sense that it's an ego, but in the sense that we are a divine being.
Yes, we are perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
We have, I love the Desiderata. You are a child of the universe. You have a right to be here, no less than a tree or a rock. You belong. So that's very Celtic. And it is understanding that we all have to surrender this body. We have to surrender our lives. How have we been living? Are we living in such a way that when the time comes to let go, we can let go with gratitude and grace and blessing? And if we're living that way and we're showing kindness and gentleness, we become magnetic. And this thing called emotional resonance. Wayne Gerber and I wrote the book, Dynamic Focus, Creating Significance and Breaking the Spells of Limitation. And we talk about the power of emotional resonance, that when you're resonating, your heart and your mind are resonating this loving field of energy and this openness and this courageous way of being, you become a magnet and you begin to impact other people and they begin to resonate with you. I've discovered, Iris, I can walk into a room of very scared executives, scared team members, and within 15 minutes, they're all calm, they're all centered, and they're coming from their hearts. Because I'm willing to be the most open and vulnerable person in the room, and my energetic field in the heart begins to entrain their hearts. I'm not going to go there. There's no need to be fearful. And I can hold a larger space, and creating that larger space opens them up. And I found it can actually work doing this too. I don't actually have to be in the room. So
Yes.
There's an energetic that gets conveyed that is so powerful. And it's such a mysterious, magical, beautiful world we live in. Why waste a moment on anything other than just showing some kindness and love and appreciation and finding a way to show blessing, to offer blessing to the world?
That is perfect. And I think that's probably a good place to end, unless you have any other final words. I think that's
I think that just remember to arise today through the strength of heaven and the light of sun and the radiance of the moon and the splendor of fire. Just remember to keep coming from that. And it's been fun talking with you. I love the questions, and
yeah.
thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. And we're gonna. I know Margot wants to probably have you back because you've got, and I do too. But I'm not saying, but when she can be here too, and but we'd love to get you back again. But I know it was tough because Dusty is so busy. We greatly appreciate the time that you came and spent here this evening. And if we can do it again sometime down the road, we'd love to have you back. And we thank everybody that came to watch. And if you know somebody that would benefit from this, you share it. The videos will be available, and it'll also get uploaded to iTunes and Spotify. So with that, thank y'all so much. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank
Thank you for joining The Eyes of Indigo with Iris Carter and Margot Ross Sears. Music is Arcadia by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons. Visit our Facebook page for broadcast details. www.facebook.com/eyesofIndigo. Show is copyrighted 2021 by Iris Carter and Margot Ross Sears. All rights reserved.